Hot Talk.
Rinder Talk.
Rob Rinder.
Clever.
Compassionate.
Questioning.
Consultative.
Convincing.
Convicted.
Rob Rinder.
Malud, Malloud, Malive. Rob Rinder and Drive on Talk Radio.
Good afternoon. You are listening to Talk Radio, the home of common sense and of great British values, offering home, sanction, solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. So, not just similar to us, but who are fighting for the freedom of their nation, a democracy under the rule of law, going to another democracy that has lit the world for the last 200 years. It ain't perfect, but it's done its bit. And of course, we need it now more than ever. I'm talking about the United States of America. Here to talk about all things stateside is Professor John Christopher Buer, our own Prof. JC, White House correspondent at Real Politics. It's a delight as ever to hear from you, Prof. I'm going to have to get to things very, very quickly without the usual pleasantries and niceties that we do. One of the things I think a lot of people were concerned about here was that President Biden wouldn't necessarily carry through some of the more aggressive sanctions on oil, bearing in mind the price at the pump and the consequent political implications for people in America. It seems that that's not the case, and he really has gone hard on sanctions, despite the implications and potential political outcomes for him. Bearing that in mind, what is sanctions on oil going to mean for the average American, and how's it going to play politically?
Well, it's 7 cents. Gas went up yesterday. But when people are asked, especially when you see all the footage of these little babies, these wonderful little children, in freezing cold with no homes, the American people have heart. And when they see that, they say, hell, if I have to pay a few extra cents for a gallon of gas to save these little kids, we'll do it. I'll do it. Yeah. And the president was very, very strong today in his press conference, which I'm sure you've seen, saying that not only will he welcome Ukrainian refugees, but he has put Putin on watch because he's taken away the most favored nation status for him, which means the prices are going to go up. He's going to have to take the hit. And he's showing he's got the hubris, a Greek word, to do it, Rob.
Right. And a bunch of the big international American conglomerates. I might note that Deutsche Bank, not an American conglomerate, is still operating in Russia. But, the biggies, McDonald's, which represented something about democratic freedom in Moscow. I was there, in fact, in 1992 as a schoolboy. I remember going there just after it opened. Starbucks, most of the big American companies have withdrawn. That makes a significant difference too, right?
Yes, and all that really doesn't matter when the world is falling apart and when you're on the edge of a nuclear war. And this guy's really threatening the entire world. And I'm afraid that he's going to keep pushing if he's not stopped eventually. And I know you're heading off and doing some miraculous work in Poland, but think of Poland and Moldova and the Baltic countries. And when will Putin stop? If he is not stopped, either internally or by NATO and the EU countries.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a part of, so far as there is a mind there, and it's difficult to determine, but there is some intelligence to suggest that he wants us to be blackmailed, to feel that he is an unpredictable person that may press the nuclear button. But although we don't necessarily have these competing spheres of influence like we did in the Cold War, America and Russia, knowing that there was mutually assured destruction, that conversation saying he might press the nuclear button when the reality is he knows that it would be as ashes in his mouth, just as it would the rest of Europe, really plays into his hands. Should we even be talking about or talking up his level of crazy?
Well, I think he's looking very bizarre lately. He's that big long table that he had his team sit at. That's gone. Now he's over. He's over the video phone with him, and he is looking rather bizarre. And that's as far as I'll go with that. But Russia has asked the Security Council to call a meeting about U.S. using chemical weapons after what he's done in Mariupol and what with the cluster bombs. And you see Lavrov on there saying that Russia did nothing. We absolutely did nothing. If it wasn't like a James Bond film or a comedy show, it would be funny, but it's not. It's very real, Rob, and I know you know that.
Sure. Prof. JC, one of the challenges that we have, I'm about to speak to Oksana, a friend of mine whose family from Ukraine. Some of them are trying and struggling to get over the Polish border. Her parents happily will be able to get US visas. Has been some of the red tape of getting refugee status. Now, of course, your country is at geographic arm's length from that horror, but you've just said that the Biden administration is going to make it easier for Ukrainians to obtain sanctuary insofar, of course, as they can afford to fly there. Can you help us to understand exactly what bureaucratic barriers have been blown away to help people claim asylum in America?
Well, there's no details yet, but I can tell you this. Members of my own family have grannies who are from Kiev. They've escaped between the pogrom and the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. They've escaped to Hamburg, we always am amazed by these grannies who took all their furniture with them, and it ended up in New Jersey and Brooklyn. They got to Hamburg and they took a boat to America. And once they were here, they were free to set up their own lives and live the American dream, which is really the U.S. Constitution. U.S. law firms, as you know, will probably do a lot of pro bono work for these individuals because they are very committed. And I understand that they're setting that up right now.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, the critical thing will be determine whether the State Department on the ground in Poland, in Hungary, in Slovakia, and the other satellite countries may, as far as they're able to operate, be more willing, ready, and able to reduce the very difficult and complex barriers of getting American visas.
Well, they better, because their boss just said they were coming over. So they better listen to the president, who is their ultimate boss. That's
good news, and no doubt you'll be privately tweeting any information you've got that to me, and I'll be retweeting it for those who are seeking asylum in America, and I'm grateful for that. You know, I want to look at some light in the darkness of all this, and one of the things that I have to say I've been noticing is leading up to this moment, it was difficult. It's been hard to think of a time when American politics has been more polarized. Of course, it's still present there, to say the very least. But watching and listening to Congress, as I have done, in the various reliable news sources, I say C-SPAN is my personal favorite. The reality is there does seem to be, for the first time in a long time, a degree of Republicans and Democrats working alongside one another on this international issue. Does that represent a little bit of light in what is otherwise a very dark time?
Well, here's some good news for you, extra, as I wrote this morning. This week, Congress passed a $1.5 trillion spending bill to keep the U.S. government running. And $14 billion of that is aid for Ukraine. Now, it takes the threat of World War III maybe to get Republicans and Democrats to actually work on behalf of the American people. But if that's what it takes, God bless them. You know, they are seeing this. We all have, there are no such things as Americans, unless you're an American Indian, and God bless the Native Americans. We all come from someplace. Right. You know, we all come from Kiev or Minsk or Pinsk or wherever you want to call it, Dublin. And we all are preciously connected to the U.S. Constitution. And that's what makes us American.
Yeah. You know, as I hear that, and as I say, that shining city on the hill and the greatness of that Constitution, and not just the convention, but the various essays that explain every single amendment of that brilliant document. I have to say, in my bag, I carry a small copy of it. I think it's such an extraordinary thing. Will we share that? You know, as I think about that promise, it does seem to me that, like you described, the existential threat to European democracy and the implications and impact that has on America, in terms of the personal histories of so many of the rich tapestries of people that live in America and come from there and populated and made your nation great, really do have a vested interest here. And it has, at least in part, forced or persuaded people that you are one America. And I just wonder whether moving forward, this might be a moment that moves the country away from the divisive issues that have affected it. And perhaps moving forward, it might encourage a nation and a population to look for more consensus politicians rather than driving them back into the heart of populists.
Well, I think this may be a moment, again, where America finds its soul. And I think make America soulful again might be a good term. And I think we are realizing, I mean, Rob, I'll be honest with you. I'm sitting there eating my dinner with my wife, and I'm watching these scenes from Mirapol, and I'm thinking, how can I be having a dinner and a glass of wine when these people are suffering? And I'm not the only one. Right. Just because I'm in politics and in journalism that I see this. American people are watching this, and they want to know how they can help, and they want to make sure that this country will always be, as they say, a shining beacon, a shining a star on the hill, or whatever Ronald Reagan or Andrew Cuomo called it. But America should be a beacon, and it welcomes them, as the Statue of Liberty says in the harbor.
Yeah, give us them all, so they say. I'm really grateful as ever, Prof. JC, and bearing in mind the burdens that the states around Ukraine are taking on, and bearing in mind we hear what you say about Ukrainians wanting to go and perhaps make their lives in America. The reality is most of them will want to stay and go back. I will be making sure that I put out there on all social media channels where it's available, access to help from America if you're fleeing Ukraine. You're listening to Rob Rinder here at the home of common sense and great British values.
Bold Talk. Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV. The world headquarters.